Jack Miller had always been a patient man. After 15 years exploring deep space and 5 more years leading humanity's third colony ship between stars, he thought he had seen every test of patience the universe could offer. Then he retired to Earth's suburbs and met Debbie Winters, the self-appointed queen of the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association. "She's at it again," Jack said quietly, watching through his kitchen window as Debbie, with her short blonde hair and tight lips, boldly plugged her portable vacuum into his outdoor outlet. This had been happening for 3 weeks now, ever since Jack had put in the new power station outside for his garden tools. Debbie had started using it every day to clean her electric car. She would run extension cords across his lawn without asking. Each time she left tire marks on his grass and water spots on his driveway. Jack had caught her twice and politely asked her to stop. Each time she gave a fake smile and said, "Oh, I'll just be a minute," before spending another 45 minutes cleaning her car. What really bothered Jack was that Debbie was the same woman who had sent him 3 notices for his satellite dish being an ugly addition that didn't match the neighborhood look. The same woman who had fined him for leaving his trash can visible from the street for more than 4 hours after pickup. The same woman who had threatened to sue when he painted his front door navy blue instead of the approved ocean mist color. "I've made peace deals with the Arcturus aliens," Jack muttered, watching her vacuum her car with his electricity. "I should be able to handle one pushy neighbor." That's when he noticed something interesting. The power line to his outdoor outlet ran next to his newly installed septic system, a compact but powerful piece of off-world technology he'd brought back from his days in the space service. It used special magnetic fields to help bacteria break down waste, making it 4 times better than normal Earth models. For the first time in weeks, Jack smiled. He wasn't a mean person naturally, but 15 years in space had taught him that. Sometimes the best answer was a clever use of technology. "Hey Gary, got a minute?" Jack called over the fence to his neighbor, a retired electrical engineer who'd helped him set up his home systems when he'd first moved in. Gary Peterson looked over the fence, his hands dirty with oil as always, wiping them on a rag. "What's up, spaceman?" "I need to make a small change to my outdoor electrical setup," Jack explained, keeping his voice casual. "Nothing big, just want to run a line through my NK47 septic processor's field generator." Gary's eyebrows went up. "You mean that alien gadget you installed instead of a normal septic tank? The one that uses quantum shaking to break down waste? What are you planning to do, electrify your yard?" Jack shook his head. "Nothing dangerous, I promise. Just want to create a specific power pattern on one outlet. It's completely safe." Gary looked doubtful. "Safe by Earth standards or by I've lived through radiation storms on Proxima Centauri standards? Because those are very different things, Jack." "Earth standards," Jack assured him with a laugh. "The field won't hurt anything living. It'll just create a unique electromagnetic pattern that will, well, let's just say it'll discourage people from using it without asking." Gary shrugged. "Your house, your rules. But I want it noted that I advised being careful." By sunset, Jack had finished the changes. The outdoor outlet now ran through a special circuit connected to his septic system's field generator. When activated, it would create a harmless but very unpleasant smell response in any device plugged into it, basically programming the device to temporarily smell exactly like his septic tank. The clever part of the system was its delayed activation. It wouldn't happen right away, but about 6 hours after usage, long enough that no one would connect cause and effect. And it would only affect devices that used more than 500 watts for longer than 10 minutes, specifically targeting things like vacuum cleaners and car cleaning equipment. Jack sat back on his porch swing that evening, drinking his coffee and feeling oddly satisfied. He wasn't looking for revenge, he told himself. This was merely a creative solution to an ongoing problem. 3 days passed before Debbie showed up again. Jack was pulling weeds in his garden when he saw her pull up, vacuum and buffer in tow. He waved politely and continued working, hiding his smile as she plugged into his modified outlet without even looking at him. "Beautiful day, isn't it, Mrs. Winters?" Jack called out. Debbie looked up, surprised that he wasn't objecting. "Yes, lovely," she replied carefully, before turning her attention back to her precious car. Jack continued gardening for another hour, sometimes glancing over as Debbie carefully cleaned her car, running her equipment on his electricity. When she finally finished, she rolled up her extension cord, gave him a smug smile, and drove away. And now we wait, Jack whispered to himself. The following morning, Jack woke up to a scream from across the street. He looked through his bedroom blinds to see Debbie frantically removing her vacuum and buffer from her car, her face twisted in disgust. Even from this distance, he could see her gagging. By noon, the entire neighborhood knew something was wrong. Debbie had called professional cleaners who were now wearing masks as they worked on her car. The smell, a perfect copy of septic tank odors, had soaked into the car's interior, the cleaning equipment, and even Debbie's garage. What could have caused this? Gary asked innocently as he and Jack watched the activity from Jack's front yard. Hard to say, Jack replied, trying to keep a straight face. Maybe some kind of bacteria growing in her cleaning equipment? I hear those small vacuums can develop quite an ecosystem if not cleaned properly. The professional cleaners left after several hours, having made little progress. The smell, enhanced and stabilized by the septic processor's quantum field, was proving remarkably hard to remove. That evening, Debbie knocked on Jack's door, her eyes red from crying or anger, possibly both. Yes, Mrs. Winters? Jack asked pleasantly. My car, she said through clenched teeth. It smells like sewage. And so does all my cleaning equipment. The cleaning service said they've never seen anything like it. Jack frowned sympathetically. That sounds terrible. Have you checked your own septic system? Sometimes those older models can leak gases in strange ways. My septic system is fine, she snapped. This started yesterday, right after She paused, her eyes narrowing as she looked past him toward his outdoor outlet. Right after what? Jack prompted innocently. Debbie's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Nothing, she finally said. Never mind. As she turned to leave, Jack called after her. Oh, Mrs. Winters, I've been meaning to ask, do you happen to have your own outdoor outlet? I noticed you've been using mine, and while I don't mind helping neighbors sometimes, it has been happening rather often. Debbie's face turned bright red. Without another word, she stormed back to her house. For a blessed week, Jack's outlet remained untouched. He was beginning to think the problem was solved when a certified letter arrived from the Homeowners Association. It detailed a new proposed rule requiring all outdoor electrical outlets to be standardized and registered with the HOA, with usage rules to be decided by the board, which Debbie chaired. You've got to be kidding me, Jack said, showing the letter to Gary over their shared fence. Gary whistled low. She's not subtle, is she? This is clearly targeting you. I spent 5 years negotiating with the Aldebaran aliens, Jack muttered. I know a personal attack when I see one. The HOA meeting was set for the following Tuesday evening at the community center. Jack arrived early, nodding politely to his neighbors as they came in. Debbie sat at the head table, her expression smug as she called the meeting to order. Item number 1 on our agenda, she announced, is the proposed rule about outdoor electrical outlets. Recent events have shown us the need for standardization and oversight. Jack raised his hand. May I ask what specific events have made this rather intrusive rule necessary? Debbie's smile tightened. Certain electrical problems have been reported in the neighborhood. For safety reasons, the board feels it's smart to implement oversight. Problems? Jack pressed. Could you be more specific? That's not relevant to the discussion, Debbie replied sharply. What's relevant is ensuring neighborhood safety and consistency. Jack stood up. With all respect, Mrs. Winters, I believe it is entirely relevant. If you're proposing rules that affect all homeowners, we deserve to know what prompted them. Several neighbors nodded in agreement. Additionally, Jack continued, I'd like to point out that Section 7 of our existing HOA charter specifically states that any new rules must address a documented community concern, not an isolated incident. Whispers spread through the room. Jack had read the entire charter the day he moved in, a habit formed from years of navigating space treaties. Furthermore, he pressed on, I'd like to request that Mrs. Winters remove herself from this vote, as she has a clear conflict of interest. Conflict of interest? Debbie sputtered. What are you talking about? Jack smiled pleasantly. Mrs. Winters has been using my outdoor outlet without permission for the past month. When her unauthorized usage resulted in some unexpected consequences, she started this rule proposal. That creates a personal conflict. The room erupted in whispers. One of the other board members, Ellen Nichols, looked at Debbie in surprise. Is this true, Debbie? You've been using Mr. Miller's electricity without permission? Debbie's face flushed. I occasionally borrowed his outlet when cleaning my car. It was a minor courtesy between neighbors. A courtesy implies permission was given, Jack pointed out calmly. I asked you twice to stop. The meeting fell into chaos after that. Multiple neighbors stood up to share their own stories of Debbie's overreach, from arbitrary fence height measurements to citations for unapproved bird feeders. By the end of the evening, not only was the electrical outlet proposal put on hold indefinitely, but a motion had been raised to hold new elections for the HOA board. As the meeting ended, Jack found himself surrounded by grateful neighbors. How? Did you do it? Asked Sam Rivera, who lived 2 doors down. Nobody's ever stood up to Debbie like that and won. Jack shrugged. When you've negotiated peace deals between star systems, a homeowners association meeting is fairly straightforward. 3 weeks later, Jack sat on his front porch enjoying the sunset. The neighborhood felt different now, more relaxed, friendlier. The HOA elections had resulted in Ellen Nichols taking over as president, with a promise to review and simplify many of the more burdensome rules. Debbie still lived across the street, but she'd been noticeably quieter since the meeting. Her car, Jack had heard through neighborhood talk, had ultimately required complete reupholstering. Her cleaning equipment had been thrown away entirely. Evening, spaceman, Gary called, walking over from his house. Mind if I join you? Please do, Jack replied, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. Gary sat down with a groan. You know, I've been meaning to ask, what exactly did you do to that outlet? The smell in Debbie's car was like nothing I've ever smelled, and I worked sewage maintenance during college. Jack smiled. The NK47 septic processor uses quantum vibrations to break down waste at the molecule level. I simply created a circuit that would imprint that vibration pattern onto any device drawing significant power. The pattern caused the device to temporarily attract and amplify similar molecular structures from the surrounding environment. Gary stared at him. In plain English, please. I made her vacuum and buffer become magnets for poop molecules, Jack translated. Not actual waste, just the exact smell signature, amplified about 1,000 times and stabilized to resist normal cleaning methods. Gary's laugh echoed down the street. That's genius, and completely impossible to trace. A solution, elegant in its simplicity, Jack agreed. Frontier colonies teach you to work with what you have. As they sat in friendly silence, a car pulled into Debbie's driveway across the street. They watched as she got out, hesitated, then walked purposefully toward Jack's house. Incoming, Gary muttered. Jack straightened up as Debbie approached his porch. Her usual confident walk was missing, and she seemed almost nervous. Good evening, Mrs. Winters. Jack greeted her politely. Mr. Miller, she nodded. She paused, clearly struggling with what she wanted to say. I wanted to apologize for using your outlet without permission. It was wrong of me. Jack nodded, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. Apology. Accepted. And, she continued, I've withdrawn my complaint about your navy blue door. The color, actually, it suits the house. Thank you, Jack replied simply. An awkward silence fell. Finally, Debbie cleared her throat. The neighborhood is having a barbecue this Saturday. Ellen thought, well, we thought you might like to come. I understand you have some fascinating stories about the colonies. Jack smiled. I'd be happy to attend. As Debbie walked back to her house, Gary nudged Jack's shoulder. Look at you. From space explorer to diplomat to neighborhood peacemaker. Jack chuckled. Some negotiations require force, others require understanding. And some, he added, glancing at his innocent-looking outdoor outlet, require a little creative problem-solving. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the neighborhood in a warm golden glow. Jack Miller, veteran of deep space and now victorious in the equally challenging waters of suburban politics, raised his coffee mug in a silent toast to his new life on Earth, a planet that, despite all its peculiarities, he was learning to call home again. The neighborhood barbecue was held in the community park on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Jack arrived with a bowl of potato salad, a recipe he had perfected during his years commanding the colony ship. Cooking for a crew of 50 had taught him the value of simple, satisfying food. The park was filled with his neighbors, many of whom he had never properly met. After the HOA meeting, people seemed more eager to introduce themselves to the spaceman, as he had become known. "Jack, over here." Ellen Nichols waved from the main picnic area. As the new HOA president, she had organized the gathering. "We saved you a spot at the table." Jack placed his potato salad among the other dishes and accepted a paper plate from Ellen. "Quite a turnout," he observed. "First neighborhood event in 3 years without mandatory attendance sheets and dress code guidelines," Ellen replied with a laugh. "People are actually enjoying themselves." As Jack filled his plate with burgers and sides, he noticed Debbie Winters standing somewhat awkwardly at the edge of the gathering. Despite their recent truce, she clearly felt out of place now that she was no longer in charge. "Maybe I should go say hello," Jack mused to Ellen. Ellen looked over at Debbie and sighed. "That might be nice. She's having a hard time adjusting. 15 years as HOA president is a long reign to give up." Jack nodded and made his way toward Debbie, balancing his food carefully. "Mrs. Winters, good to see you made it to the barbecue." Debbie turned, surprised. "Mr. Miller, yes. Well, I live in the neighborhood too. The potato salad is mine," Jack offered. "Secret recipe from my colony ship days. You should try some." A hint of curiosity broke through Debbie's stiff expression. "You really were a colony ship commander? I thought people were just exaggerating." 15 years exploring, 5 years commanding the Horizon, humanity's third interstellar colony vessel, Jack confirmed. "We established the outpost on Proxima Centauri b." "That's actually impressive," Debbie admitted. "What made you retire? To Sunnyside Estates? Seems rather boring after exploring the stars." Jack smiled. "When you've spent 20 years in the vast emptiness of space, a small yard with a garden looks like paradise." He paused, then added, "Even with strict HOA regulations." Debbie had the grace to look embarrassed. "About those regulations, I may have been a bit strict." "A bit," Jack agreed with a gentle smile. Before they could continue their conversation, a loud crash came from the parking lot. Everyone turned to see a sleek black government car that had just pulled in, its door now dented against a park bench. A tall woman in a crisp uniform emerged, scanning the crowd until her eyes locked on Jack. "Commander Miller," she called sharply. "We need to speak immediately." Jack's easy demeanor vanished. His back straightened, his shoulders squared, and his voice took on a tone of authority that none of his neighbors had heard before. "Admiral Lewis, I wasn't expecting Earth Defense Command at our neighborhood barbecue." The Admiral strode forward, ignoring the staring neighbors. "This isn't a social call, Commander. We have a situation." Jack set his plate down on a nearby table. "I'm retired, Admiral. Whatever situation you have, there must be active commanders better suited to handle it." "Not for this," Admiral Lewis replied, handing him a datapad. "The Arcturus delegation is refusing to proceed with the trade negotiations. They're demanding the Star-Crosser as mediator." Jack looked down at the pad, his expression grim. "Star-Crosser was the name the Arcturians gave me after the peace accords." "Yes, and they're threatening to withdraw from the Sol system entirely, unless you come to the orbital station to oversee the negotiations," the Admiral explained. "The economic implications would be catastrophic." Jack ran a hand through his hair. "When would we need to leave?" "Now," the Admiral said flatly. "My shuttle is waiting at the airfield. You'll be back in 3 days if all goes well." The barbecue had gone silent as everyone watched the exchange. Debbie stepped forward, her expression a mix of confusion and awe. "Mr. Miller, what's happening?" she asked. Jack turned to her with an apologetic smile. Interstellar politics, Mrs. Winters. It seems my retirement is being temporarily interrupted." Gary pushed through the crowd. "You're just going to leave? Just like that?" "Sometimes duty calls at inconvenient moments," Jack replied, his voice calm but firm. "Ellen, please tell everyone I'm sorry to miss the rest of the barbecue. My potato salad is free for anyone to enjoy." As Jack began walking toward the Admiral's car, Debbie surprised everyone by calling out, "Wait!" Jack turned back, eyebrows raised. "Your house," Debbie said. "If you're going to be gone, even for a few days, someone should keep an eye on it. Water your plants, that sort of thing." "My house will be fine," Jack began, but Debbie cut him off. "I insist," she said firmly. "It's the least I can do after everything. Consider it a neighborhood courtesy." Jack studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Winters, I would appreciate that. The code to the garage is 4729. The plants only need water every other day." "I'll take care of it," she promised. As Jack left with the Admiral, the neighbors burst into excited conversation. Sam Rivera summed up the general feeling. Did anyone else not realize we had an actual space hero living among us? The next 3 days were filled with wild speculation throughout Sunnyside Estates. Children pointed at Jack's house with new respect, and several neighbors reported seeing unusual lights in the night sky that they were certain must be related to Jack's mysterious mission. Debbie, true to her word, checked on Jack's house daily. She watered his plants, brought in his mail, and even mowed his lawn when she noticed it was getting long. The neighbors watched her with surprise, unused to seeing the former HOA tyrant performing acts of simple kindness. On the evening of the third day, Ellen organized an impromptu welcome-back gathering on Jack's front lawn. "He'll be tired," she explained to the assembled neighbors. "We'll just give him a quick welcome home, then let him rest." When the black government car finally pulled up, the entire neighborhood erupted in cheers. Jack emerged, looking exhausted, but smiling. He wore the same casual clothes he'd left in, but there was a small silver pin on his collar that hadn't been there before. "What's all this?" he asked, taking in the gathering on his lawn. "Welcome home, Starcrosser," Gary called out, and everyone laughed. Jack shook his head, embarrassed but pleased. "I appreciate the welcome, but I'm afraid I can't discuss the mission." "We understand," Ellen assured him. "We just wanted you to know we're glad you're back safely." As the neighbors began to disperse, Debbie approached Jack with a folder. "Your mail," she explained. "Also, I took the liberty of filing an exemption for your satellite dish with the HOA. As the former president, I know the process. It's been approved permanently." Jack accepted the folder with genuine surprise. "Thank you, Mrs. Winters. That's very kind of you." Debbie smiled, a real smile without the tightness that had always characterized her expressions before. "Please, call me Debbie. And it wasn't kindness, it was fairness. Something I perhaps lost sight of over the years." As Debbie walked away, Gary came up and nudged Jack's shoulder. "So, save the galaxy again?" Jack laughed. "Just a minor trade dispute, though I have to admit, it was easier to negotiate interstellar peace than it was to handle one determined HOA president. Speaking of which," Gary nodded toward Debbie's retreating figure, "that's quite a transformation. Sometimes people just need a reminder that rules work better with respect than with fear," Jack said thoughtfully. "Even if that reminder comes through an unconventional connection between an outdoor outlet and a septic tank." Life in Sunnyside Estates settled into a new pattern in the weeks following Jack's return from space. The neighborhood was different now, more friendly and less controlled. Under Ellen's leadership, the HOA had reduced its rulebook from 78 pages to just 12. Focusing on essential maintenance rather than strict control. Jack found himself becoming something of a local celebrity. Parents would bring their children by to hear stories of the colonies, and teenagers would ask for help with science projects. He took it all in stride, enjoying the chance to share his experiences with interested listeners. One sunny morning, As Jack tended to his garden, a silver car pulled up to the curb. He recognized it immediately as belonging to Debbie Winters. Since the barbecue and his brief return to space duty, they had developed an odd sort of friendship. "Morning, Debbie," Jack called, setting down his gardening tools. "What brings you by?" Debbie stepped out of her car holding a thick folder. "Good morning, Jack. I was hoping I could ask for your help with something." Jack raised his eyebrows. The former HOA president asking for help was still a novelty. "Of course, what do you need?" "I've been going through old HOA records," she explained, waving the folder. "There's 20 years of documentation here about neighborhood improvements that were proposed but never implemented. Parks, community, gardens, bike path. Good ideas that got buried in paperwork or rejected for not following the aesthetic guidelines." Jack wiped his hands on a cloth. "And you want to resurrect some of these ideas?" "I do," Debbie nodded. "But I need help with the planning. Ellen suggested that someone with experience managing large projects might be useful." Jack smiled. "Someone who commanded a colony ship with 500 people and supplies for building an entire outpost." "Exactly," Debbie said, her face serious. "Your septic tank trick taught me a valuable lesson, Jack. I spent 15 years focusing on rules and appearance, when I could have been using that energy to actually improve things." Jack gestured toward his porch. "Come sit down. Let's see what you've got." They spent the morning going through the old proposals. Many were simple and practical. A children's playground, designated walking paths, community vegetable gardens. Others were more ambitious, including a small observatory on the hill at the edge of the development. "This observatory proposal is interesting," Jack said, studying the plans. "It was submitted 10 years ago by Dr. Reyes, who used to live in the gray house on Oak Street. And I rejected it because the dome wouldn't match the neighborhood roof lines," Debbie admitted, looking embarrassed. Jack laughed. "Well, the design could use some updating anyway. Modern telescope systems don't necessarily need large domes anymore." Debbie looked up sharply. "You think we could actually build it?" "I think it would be an incredible resource for the community," Jack replied. "Imagine the school children being able to see Jupiter's moons or Saturn's rings firsthand." Debbie's eyes lit up with enthusiasm that Jack had never seen in her before. "The hill is still common property. We could apply for a community development grant. The school district might even contribute if we make it available for educational purposes." As they continued planning, Gary wandered over from next door, curious about the activity. Soon, he too was drawn into the discussion, offering suggestions about solar power options for the observatory. "This is going to require approval from the current HOA board," Debbie pointed out. "And fundraising, permits, construction plans." "One step at a time," Jack advised. "First, let's create a proper proposal with updated designs. Then we present it to Ellen and the board." By lunchtime, Jack's kitchen table was covered with papers, notes, and rough sketches. The three of them had expanded beyond just the observatory to a comprehensive community improvement plan. "You know," Debbie said thoughtfully as they took a break for sandwiches, "I never realized planning improvements could be this enjoyable. I always saw the HOA's job as maintaining what we had, not creating something new." "Creation is always more satisfying than mere maintenance," Jack replied. "That's why I joined the space program. Building the future is more rewarding than preserving the past." 2 weeks later, Jack, Debbie, and Gary stood before the HOA board, presenting their community improvement plan. Ellen and the other board members listened attentively as Jack outlined the proposal. "The centerpiece would be the community observatory," Jack explained, showing the updated designs. "But we're also proposing walking paths that connect all parts of the neighborhood, 3 small themed gardens, and a playground renovation." "This is ambitious," Ellen commented, looking impressed. "What about funding?" Debbie stepped forward. "I've been in contact with the county development office. They have matching grants available for community projects. If we can raise half the funds ourselves, they'll match it. And I've reached out to my old colleagues at the space agency," Jack added. "They have an educational outreach program that's willing to donate a telescope and equipment if we provide the facility." The board voted unanimously to approve the plan. As they left the meeting, Debbie seemed almost in shock. "I can't believe they approved everything," she said. When I was president, getting approval for a new park bench took 3 meetings and a color consultation. Jack smiled. The difference is that you were asking for permission to control. We're asking for permission to contribute. Over the next 6 months, Sunnyside Estates transformed. Weekend work parties became regular events, with neighbors coming together to clear walking paths, build garden beds, and lay the foundation for the observatory. Jack's experience with colony construction proved invaluable, helping to organize the volunteers into efficient teams. Debbie surprised everyone, including herself, by becoming the project's most enthusiastic supporter. She used her extensive knowledge of county regulations to navigate permits and approvals, turning what could have been bureaucratic obstacles into smooth processes. You know, Gary commented to Jack one evening as they watched a concrete truck pour the observatory foundation. I never thought I'd see the day when Debbie Winters would be covered in dirt and smiling about it. Jack nodded. People can change when given the right opportunity. All because you connected an outlet to a septic tank, Gary laughed. Who would have thought that the smell of waste would lead to such a sweet outcome? Sometimes, Jack replied, philosophically, people need a small push to find their best selves. In space, we learned that the harshest environments often produce the most remarkable transformations. As the sun set over the hill, the community continued working, installing, lighting along the new paths. Jack watched Debbie directing a group of teenage volunteers, her face animated and her voice encouraging rather than commanding. The septic tank incident had long since been forgotten by most, but Jack knew it had been the catalyst for something much more important than neighborhood peace. It had been the beginning of transformation, not just for Debbie but for the entire community. 1 year had passed since the septic tank incident that changed Sunnyside Estates forever. The community observatory was finally complete, standing proudly on the hill overlooking the neighborhood. Its modern design featured a retractable roof, rather than a traditional dome, and inside sat a powerful telescope donated by the space agency. Tonight was the grand opening celebration. Jack stood at the observatory entrance, watching as families made their way up the newly paved path. Colorful, solar lights lined the walkway, illuminating the evening stroll. Nervous? Gary asked, joining his friend at the doorway. Jack shook his head. Not nervous, just proud. I've helped build colonies on distant worlds, but there's something special about building something right here at home. Inside the observatory, Debbie was arranging refreshments on a table. She had traded her once perfect business attire for practical jeans and a Sunnyside Astronomical Society t-shirt. The society was her idea, a community group that would manage the observatory and organize viewing events. The mayor just pulled up, she called to Jack, and I think I saw a news van from the local station. Jack nodded. The project had gained attention beyond their neighborhood, becoming a model for community-led development in the county. What had started as a simple idea had grown into something much larger. Ellen arrived with her family, beaming with pride. As the current HOA president, she had supported the project from day one. This place looks amazing, Jack. I can hardly believe this is the same hill where kids used to come to ride sleds in winter. They still can, Jack pointed out. We designed the paths to leave the sledding slope untouched. A community space should serve everyone, in all seasons. By 7 o'clock, the observatory was packed with visitors. Neighbors, county officials, and curious people from surrounding areas had all come to see what Sunnyside had created. Children pressed their faces against the glass display cases that housed meteorite specimens and space mission patches donated by Jack's former colleagues. The mayor gave a short speech, praising the community spirit that had made the project possible. Then he turned to Jack and Debbie, who stood side by side near the telescope. I understand this whole project began with an unusual dispute between 2 neighbors, the mayor said with a smile. Would either of you care to share that story? Jack and Debbie exchanged glances, both trying not to laugh. Let's just say we had different views on the proper use of electrical outlets, Jack offered diplomatically, and different approaches to community management, Debbie added. Fortunately, we found common ground. The crowd chuckled, most of them familiar with at least some version of the septic tank story. which had become neighborhood legend over the past year. As darkness fell, Jack operated the controls that slid open the observatory roof. The crowd gasped as the night sky was revealed above them, stars twinkling in the clear autumn air. Jack stepped aside, gesturing for Debbie to take the lead. This had been their agreement. He had handled the construction, but she would run the observatory. Programs. Tonight, Debbie announced to the gathered crowd, we'll be looking at Jupiter and its moons. The largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter has at least 80 moons orbiting it. Through our telescope, we'll be able to see the 4 largest, first, observed by Galileo in 1610. She moved to the telescope, making final adjustments before inviting the children to line up for their turn to view. Jack watched with satisfaction as young faces lit up with wonder upon seeing another world for the first time. You've created something special here, a voice said beside him. Jack turned to find Admiral Lewis in her dress uniform, looking out of place among the casual crowd. Admiral, Jack greeted her with surprise. I didn't know you were coming. The space agency keeps me informed of their educational partnerships, she explained. When I saw your name on the donation request, I was intrigued. From negotiating with aliens to building observatories. You're a man of many talents, Commander Miller. Jack smiled. Just a concerned citizen doing his part, Admiral. The Admiral lowered her voice. Actually, I'm here with an offer. The Arcturians are establishing a permanent embassy on Earth, and they've specifically requested a liaison with experience in both worlds. Someone they trust. Jack raised an eyebrow. Someone like the Star-Crosser? Precisely, Admiral Lewis confirmed. It would be a part-time position, advisory only. You could remain here in your community. Jack looked around the observatory, at the children excitedly waiting for their turn at the telescope, at Gary explaining the solar system model to a group of parents, at Debbie patiently showing a young girl how to focus the eyepiece. I'm honored by the offer, Jack said slowly. And I admit maintaining connections with the Arcturians is important work. But, the Admiral prompted, sensing his hesitation. But I've also found important work here, Jack finished. Is there a way I could do both? Admiral Lewis smiled. I thought you might say that. Yes, we can arrange a schedule that allows you to continue your community projects. The Arcturians don't understand human bureaucracy anyway. They'd probably appreciate someone who only works with them 3 days a week. After the Admiral left, Jack found Debbie taking a break from telescope duty. Was that your space commander? She asked curiously. Jack nodded. She offered me a position as liaison to the Arcturian embassy. You're leaving? Debbie looked concerned. No, Jack assured her. It's part-time. I'll be here for most of the week, only in Washington a few days. The observatory will still get my attention. Debbie smiled with relief. Good. We've come too. Far to lose our space expert now. Besides, who else would understand the complexities of mixing septic tanks and electrical systems? They both laughed, the old incident now a fond memory rather than a point of contention. As the evening wound down, Jack stood on the hill outside the observatory, looking down at Sunnyside Estates. From this height, he could see the whole neighborhood, the new gardens blooming even in autumn, the walking paths connecting once separated areas, the playground where children would gather on warm days. Gary joined him, following his gaze. Quite a change from when you moved in, isn't it? Jack nodded. From battling over an outdoor outlet to building an observatory, who would have predicted that? The universe works in strange ways, Gary replied philosophically. Speaking of which, Debbie mentioned you're going to be working with actual aliens now? Part-time diplomat, Jack confirmed. The rest of the time, I'm still your neighbor. Good, Gary said firmly, because I have plans for a community greenhouse next and I'll need your engineering expertise. Jack laughed. One project at a time, Gary. As they walked back toward the observatory, Jack reflected on the journey of the past year. A simple act of mischief with a septic tank had somehow led to friendship, community renewal, and now a bridge between worlds. Sometimes the unlikeliest beginnings led to the most remarkable destinations. Inside, Debbie was showing the last group of visitors to the door. Same time next week for the meteor shower viewing, she reminded them cheerfully. Jack smiled to himself. From HOA tyrant to passionate astronomy educator, people really could change. And sometimes all they needed was a little push, or perhaps a unique scent to guide them toward a better path.